Hi all. So this is the second part of object-oriented programming. In this lecture, we will see inheritance and different types of inheritance. So in the last lecture, we have seen how to define a class, how to create objects, and how to define this constructor and all. So we will see a recap of that thing. So with a small example, so we have a class called employee class, and this is a docstring, and this is the mcount is a variable, class variable of this employee. Then we have an init. This is a constructor. This method is known as a constructor. So it starts with double underscores and it ends with double underscores. And second method is display count. Another method is there. We call it as display employee. And all the first parameter for the methods are self. Okay, so we have already seen how to define this class and all. Then we can create different objects for the class. M1 is an object for employee class, and we have to give two values because we have to give name and salary for this thing. So Sarah and 2000 is given. So what it does is it initiates when we create this object, it initializes, it invokes a constructor, and this name, that name will be assigned to that object, and salary will be assigned to that self.salary. Then what we do is we are accessing this m count. So it is initially 0. So when the first object is created, this m count becomes 1. Then again when we invoke this m2, when we create this m2 object, what happens is again this constructor is invoked and m count becomes 2. Then finally what we do is we are using m1 to call the display employee method. So display employee method is this function. So what it does is it will simply print the name and salary. Then again we are using m2. So we are using m2 to display employee. So the name and salary of m2 will be displayed here. Then again what we are doing, we are printing total employee and we are calling employee.mcount. So mcount is actually this class variable. So if we have created two objects, then this mcount will be 2. So if we run this program, we can see this. So this will be like this. So first object will create this thing, second object will print this thing, and the total employee count will be 2. So this we have seen in the previous lecture, what is a constructor, what is a method and all. So in this lecture we will see about inheritance. So inheritance actually it is a capability of one class to derive or inherit the properties from another class. So if you want to derive certain properties, so if we consider there may be several properties that are common to different classes. For example, if we have different classes like bikes, cars, buses, trucks and all, they have some common features like the number of tires. So there will be number of wheels. Every vehicle will be having some tires. So all the similar kind of attributes can be grouped into a common class called vehicle class. Or the similar functionalities or the methods can be used in the vehicle class. And all these classes, we call it, this is known as the base class, and these are known as the derived classes. So these classes are derived from this base classes, which means that all the attributes and all the methods of this vehicle class can be used by all these derived classes. And pedal bikes and motorbikes are derived from bikes. So that means all the attributes and functionalities or the methods of this bikes can be used by this thing. And this pedal bikes and motorbikes can also use the attributes and methods of vehicles also, because it is derived from vehicles class. So this is known as inheritance. So all the properties or the behavior can be inherited to the children. So this is known as inheritance. So this is an important feature in object-oriented programming. because it has several benefits. One thing, it really represents a real world relationship. So if you consider any real world relationship, there is always this kind of inheritance kind of thing, parent child, son daughter, everything. There will be some real world relationship will have some kind of inheritance. So this kind of property will be there. If you take a company employee, so if you take a person, it can be considered as a person class. In the under person class, there will be employees, there will be students, there will be faculty. All this will be different classes. So if you take student is a person, or employee, it is also a person. So if there are some common features, so for example, an employee will have a name, a student will also have a name. So all those can be included in the person or the parent class. So we can directly inherit from the person class. So if you take any type of real world examples, relationship, there will be some inheritance kind of thing. And also it provides reusability of code. Reusability means if we have include the common features and attributes inside this vehicle class, if we want to use the same code for some other program, we can simply use the same class for that program also. Or we need not repeatedly write the same code inside this bike. So if the number of tires, if it is there in the vehicles, we need not include the number of tires in bikes because that variable already exists in the vehicle class. Or it should not be included in the pedal bike or motorbike. We need not include those things. So that code reusability is also there. We can use the same vehicle code for some other program also. Maybe when we are writing some other program, some of the features will be used there also. If some attributes or some functionalities or some methods of the say vehicles can be used or might be used in a different program also. So code reusability is also supported when inheritance is there. Then it is transitive in nature. So which means that if class B inherits from another class A, then all the subclasses of B would be automatically inherit from class A. Meaning is that if we call vehicles as A class and bikes as B class, then if B is inherited from so bike is inherited from vehicle, then all the subclasses of bikes inherits everything from vehicle class also. So this is known as transitivity. So we will see a simple example for inheritance. So this is a simple example. We have a person class here. We have two classes. One is person class. Another subclass is there. And employee class is there. Okay. So if we consider this person class, we have already seen in the previous lecture. So every class has a parent class which is known as the object class. So this is the root class of all classes or object. So we may not include this thing. We can simply write like this also, or we can simply include this object also. So person class is a base class, and we have a constructor inside this person class, and we have two methods. One is getName and isEmployee method is there. It simply prints inside person, and also it returns simply a false value. Then we have a second class. We call it as employee class, and if you check inside the bracket, it is not object, it is person. So this means employee class is derived from person class. So the employee class is derived from this person class, which means that all the things, whatever is there inside this person class, can be used by the employee class also. So we have a function isEmployee function is there. The same isEmployee is there here also, but here we are printing inside employee and we are returning true. So we can have same name methods also. Then what we do is we are creating an emb object. We are creating an emb object for the person class. We are creating a emb, or we will call this as person object, and we will call this emb, since it is. So we will call it this person, and we will call this as PRR. This will be PER, and this will be emb. Okay. So what we are doing is we are creating an object for person, and there is a constructor. So here person class has a constructor which has a self parameter and a name parameter. So we are giving a name also, Arun, and what we are doing is we are printing per dot get name. So what it does is it invokes the get name method inside this, and it will simply return the name of it. Then also what we are doing is per dot is employee is also called is employee. So here person object PR is an object for person. So this is employee will be called. So inside person and false will be printed. Then secondly, we are creating an emp object, and this is for and we are creating giving a value also Linu. But inside this employee class, if we see, there is no constructor at all. There is no constructor for this class. But this Linu will be initiated because we have already mentioned, since it is inherited from person class, we have a constructor inside this person class. So this invokes this constructor. Since we do not have a constructor inside this employee class, so it will automatically invoke the constructor of person class because employee is inherited from person class. So this will be initialized to, that Linu will be initialized to that object. M dot name will be Linu. Then what we do is m dot get name is called. So employee is actually an object for employee. So if we check, get name is not a method inside this employee. So since it is inherited from here, this get name will be called and it will return the self name. And similarly, m dot is employee. So we have an is employee inside this emp itself. So this is employee will be called. Inside this employee, this is employee will be called. So if you run this program, you can see that. So it initially invokes inside person, then Arun will be printed and false also will be printed. So that is what which is inside this thing. Then second time inside it will go inside employee and Linu true will be printed. So here it will be printed like this. So this is an example for inheritance. So there are different types of inheritances in Python. First one is simple inheritance, where we have a parent class and a child class. The child, all the attributes or the function behavior of the parent class is inherited by the child class, and additionally, child class have its own attributes and their own functionalities. Then we have multiple inheritance, where we have two parent classes and a child class. This child class inherits from both P1 and P2. Then we can have multi-level inheritance. We have a parent class, we have an intermediary class, where all the features of parent class is inherited by this child class. Additionally, it can have its own class. It can also have its own methods and attributes. And this child class inherits from child class 2, which means it inherits everything from this child class 1, and additionally, it can have its own attributes also, attributes and functionalities or methods. Then we have hierarchical inheritance, where we have a single parent class and we have two or more child classes which inherits from the same parent class. Then we have hybrid inheritance, which is a combination of all these inheritance. So if we check this hybrid inheritance, we have hierarchical inheritance with these three classes. Then we have multiple inheritance with these three classes. Then we have a simple inheritance with like this thing, and we have a multi-level inheritance in these two ways. So it is a combination of all these inheritances. We call it as hybrid inheritance. So all these inheritances are there in Python. So we will see examples for each type. First is simple inheritance or single inheritance, where we have a parent class and a base class, or a base class and a derived class, or parent class and a child class. So everything from the parent will be derived from by the child class, and additionally it will have its own features also. We will see an example for that thing. So this is an example. Here we have a class employee. So this is the parent class or the base class. We call it as base class. And we have a child employee, which is derived from employee. So this is the child class. Okay. Then what we have inside this class employee, we have a variable m type. So this is an m type is a variable of this employee class. We are simply initializing it to regular. Then we have a constructor inside this employee, which where we have to give three parameters: name, age, and salary is to be given. So all these will be assigned to its objects. Then we have an employee function is there, which will simply print I can access the parent method. Then there is a child class is there, child employee class is there. Here also we have a constructor. So additionally we have an ID also inside this parameter. The rest are the same as the parent employee. Then we have a child function which simply prints employee type, and it is accessing this m type variable. So this m type variable is actually not a variable in this child employee. It is actually a variable inside this employee class. So since it inherits everything, it can access the variables of employee class also. So m type can be accessed inside this child class. So what we do is we are creating an emb object for this employee, and we are giving name, age, and salary. Then we are creating another object for child employee class, child, where we have to give name, age, salary, and an ID should be given also. Then what we are doing is we are printing employee age as m.age. So what it does is simply invokes this object, calls this m.age. It can print the thing. Then we are using the child.age. So it will print the child's age, that is 45 will be printed. Then what we do is we are using the child object to call the employee function. So child object is used to call the employee method. So employee function is actually a method inside this employee class, and we are using a child object. So we are using a child object. So this object actually belongs to this class. So we are using an object of this class to call a method from this parent class. And this child object is again used to call this child function method. Okay. So yeah, it is possible to access all the attributes and the methods of this parent class by this child class also. So we can run this program. So if you run this, we get the employee age as 22, then child age will be 45. And this is actually the method inside the parent method. We use the child object to call that, access that method. And again, regular is actually stored in the employee. We use the child method to access the parent attribute. So this is possible in the case of inheritance. So this is simple inheritance. Then we have second type of inheritance. We call it as multiple inheritance, where we have two base classes and we have a derived class. So this derived class contains all the features of base 1, all the features of base 2, and additionally it can have its own features also, derived features. It can have its own features. So we will see an example for this type of inheritance, multiple inheritance. So we have a class mother is there. So this is base class 1, and we have another class father is there. This is known as father is there. Then so we can simply use the same functionality what we have used. Okay. So this is class mother and class father is there, and we have a derived class, class son. And if you see inside the bracket, we are giving as mother comma father. So which means that son class is derived from both mother and father class. So it can have all the features of these two classes. All the methods and all the attributes which are used inside these two classes can be accessed inside the son class. Using the son's object, we can use so. So if we see the son class, there is a method, parents method is there, where we are using accessing the father name. Father name is actually inside the father class, and actually mother name is inside the mother class. Okay. So the actual code will be like this. We are simply initializing, we are creating an object for son class S1, since there is no constructor inside this thing. So we simply initialize this to null. Then we are calling S1, we are giving son S1 dot father name as Abdul. So we are creating an object S1, and we are giving using that object we are assigning some value for the father name. So this does not have a father name attribute. So father name is actually an attribute of this class. So what it does is this father name will be made to Abdul, and mother name. So this S1 we are all using the object of son. So there is no mother name inside this class. So it is accessing the mother name of the mother class, and we are giving as Nasrin. Then what we are doing is we are calling S1 dot parents. So S1 dot parents means, so it is an object for son class, and parents is a method inside this thing. So it just simply calls father equal to self dot father name. So it invokes the father. Abdul will be printed, and mother equal to mother Nasrin will be printed. Then again what we are doing is S1 dot mother age method is called. Mother age is not a method of this derived class. So mother age is actually a method of mother class. Since son is inherited from mother class, so we can access this using the object of S1 itself. So S1 dot mother age will invoke this method, and this thing will be printed. Mother's name or Nasrin's age is 45 will be printed. Similarly, S1 dot father age, so it will invoke this method. So Abdul's age is 50 will be printed. So if you run this program, you can see this father Abdul, then mother Nasrin, and the age will be printed like this. So this is multiple inheritance. Then third type of inheritance is multi-level inheritance. We have a base class, then there is an intermediate class, then there is a derived class. So this C class inherits everything from B class, and this B class inherits everything from A class. So automatically C inherits everything from A class also. So this is known as multi-level inheritance. So we will see an example for this thing. So the first class is grandfather. So we will give the same notation here, grandfather class, and there is no class above it, only object class is above it. And we have an intermediate class, we call it as father, and it is inherited from grandfather. Okay. Then we have a son class, which is inherited from father. So this is multi-level. So grandfather, under that father, and under that son. So this son class can access everything from grandfather and father. So here inside this grandfather we have a constructor only, and also inside the father we have a constructor, and inside this constructor it invokes the grandfather's constructor also, grandfather dot initiate. So father invokes a grandfather's constructor also. So that can be accessed because father is actually derived from grandfather. So it can invoke the constructor of grandfather. Similarly, here inside this son constructor, it is invoking the father constructor also, father dot init. And it is printing, we have a print name method inside this son class, which prints the father's name, the grandfather's name, father's name, and son's name. So everything will be printed, and all these attributes, actually son name is the only attribute inside this class. Father name is an attribute of the father or intermediate class, and the grandfather name is an attribute of this class. So this is a code for that thing. What we do is we are creating an object for S1, and S1 object is created for son. Then what we are giving is first attribute is self, then after that son name should be given, that is Prince Jacob, then father name should be given, that is Jacob Thomas, and grandfather name it is Thomas Kurian. All these three names are given. So it invokes this constructor, and what it does is son name will be stored there. Then what it does is it is invoking the father constructor. So, and father name and grandfather name will be passed here. So it will again call here, then father name will be stored here. After that it is invoking the grandfather constructor, so self and father name. So it invokes this constructor, and grandfather name will be stored here. Then after that what it does is it is using the object S1. So this one is actually son object, and it is accessing grandfather name. So grandfather name is an attribute of this grandfather class. So we can simply print the grandfather name. So Thomas Kurian will be printed here, and again it is calling print name method is called here. So all these things will be printed. So you will run the program. If you run this, you will get like this. So Thomas Kurian is grandfather's name. After that, again all the three will be printed like this. So this is known as multi-level inheritance. And the fourth type of inheritance is a hierarchical inheritance. Here we have a base class, and two or more classes will inherit from the same base class. So B, C, D, everything is inherited from A class. So you will see an example for that. So we have a parent class. We call it as base class. We have a parent class, and we have a method inside that. We call it as func1, and we have two different derived classes. We call it as child1 and child2. So child1 is derived from parent, and child2 is also derived from parent. And here we have a method func2. So class 1 has a method, or child1 has a method called func2, and child2 has a method called func3. It simply prints this function is in child1, this function is in child2, like this it will be printed. Then what we do is we are creating object 1 for child1. So we are creating an object for child1, and also object 2 belongs to this child2. Now we are calling object 1. We are using object 1 to call function 1. So function 1 is actually inside the parent class. This can be invoked. This can be called because child1 is derived from parent. So using the object of child1, we can invoke this function 1. Similarly, then object 1 dot function 2 is called because function 2, it is the same object, so it can invoke its own method. Then it is not a problem. Then we use the object 2 call to invoke function 1. So object 2 is actually an object for this child 2. So it can be used to invoke this thing because this child 2 is called, or it is derived from the parent class. So if you run this program, you can see this thing. So this function is in parent class, like that all those things will be printed. So this is known as hierarchical inheritance. Then the last type of inheritance is hybrid inheritance. In hybrid inheritance, all these combinations can happen. So if we see this, we have a multi-level thing, multiple inheritance is there, simple inheritance is there, everything can happen. So we'll see an example for this hybrid inheritance. So this is an example, school. So school is a base class, some base class is there. Its root class is only the object class. Then we have a student1 class which is inherited from school. Then we have a student2 class which is also inherited from school class. Then we have a student3 which is inherited from student1. So student1, so it is inherited from student. Student3 is inherited from student1. And we have different functions, so func1, func2, func3, func4. Now what we do is we are creating an object for S3, that is student3 we are creating. We are creating an object for this thing, and with this, since it is inherited from student1, we can access this function 2 also. And also we can access this function 1 also because this student1 is inherited from school. So function 1 can also be called, although that method can also be invoked using the same S3 object. So that is what we are seeing here. So S3 is used to call function 1 and function 2. So S3 dot function 1 means S3 is actually an object for this class, but function 1 is not a function inside this thing. It is actually a function 1 is inside this school class. So it can be invoked because this is derived from student1, and student1 is inherited from school. So this function 1 can be accessed inside this object. Using the object of student3, we can access this function 1. So that is what we are seeing here. So function 1, and then we can access function 2 also, because function 2 is inside this student1 class and student3 is derived from student1. So if you run this program, you can see all those will be executed. So this is known as hybrid inheritance. So these are the different types of inheritance. These are the references. Thank you.